Hello. Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all today. And obviously, it goes without saying, I hope you and your families are well. So, my name is Liam, and I'm the head of the Data and Information Centre of Excellence at NGN. And over the next 20 minutes, I'm just going to talk to you about how at NGN we've put data at the front and centre of how we've become a digital business and how we've increased the maturity in our data management practices. But rather than just talk you through the good things and the things that went well, I thought it'd also be worth just spending a bit of time just to talk through not the mistakes we made, but the lessons learned. Some of you may be on the beginning of a journey that we're on and may find it useful, or other people may be further ahead of where we are, and maybe you just might be able to relate, I guess, to the challenges that we've been through as a business over the last few years. So to do this, I thought I'd give a general overview of the data management journey we've been on, and two specific examples of how we put data management activities at the forefront of our business to build smarter ways of working, and how we've utilised geospatial technology to both bring benefit to our colleagues and customers, and how this are setting a good foundation for what's to come next. But before we begin, I just thought I'd give you a bit of an overview of who are NGN for those of you who don't know us. So Northern Gas Networks is a company, and we're responsible for transporting gas to homes and businesses across Yorkshire, the North East and Cumbria. We don't own the gas, we own the assets, what natural gas travels through. So if you have a gas supply at home and you live in the north of England, we are most likely your provider. So our area covers cities such as Newcastle, Sunderland, Leeds, York, Hull and Bradford, and we obviously also extend out into the rural areas of North Yorkshire and Cumbria. So a bit about me. I've been at NGN now since 2013, and I've been really fortunate that all of my roles were in NGN have been around data. First of all, my role was around just inputting data about our assets into our core ERP system, and then I moved into a data quality role where I looked at obviously improving our processes around the collection of a certain data item. And then from that, I was really fortunate to move more into an analyst role to then start using that data to help drive business decisions, whether that be on what maintenance frequencies our assets should be on, how we could use data to inform investment decisions. And because of that, it gave me a real good understanding, I guess, of the enterprise data model within NGN. And most recently, I was responsible for our data migration activities for our implementation of SAP S4HANA, which we went live with last October, so just over a year ago. And in July 2019, I moved into the position of the head of the Data and Information Centre of Excellence. So I have some really interesting key skills. Firstly, I absolutely love data, probably like most people listening to this. Now, data is obviously a really big subject area, and my kind of first love with data was around them core data management activities, so the likes of data governance, data quality management, and data protection. You know, when things like GDPR came in, I actually was quite interested in GDPR, and very fortunate to do it as part of my day job. But what I did learn with that is the quality of data is the most important thing of all. Because if you are wanting to move into a world of artificial intelligence and automation and making data-driven decisions, the quality of that data is fundamental to that. And over the past year or so, I've been really fortunate to be able to expand this into the more exciting areas, such as data science and automation. And I'm absolutely obsessed with understanding how businesses work, what it is they do, and what it is they actually do under the hood when you look at them a little bit different. And this is more of a hobby, but this actually drove, I guess, how we thought about data and technology within NGN, and I'll go on to talk about in a moment. And my key skill, I am wrong quite a lot, and I've learned as I'm getting older to become more comfortable with this. And I have really learned as part of this role, actually, it's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to get stuff wrong. It's the identifying it early enough so you can stop, reevaluate, and move on. And I'll give you an example of how that played into where we delivered our data management strategy within NGN. So I kind of just want to begin on consider the Milkman. Anybody probably under the age of 30 won't remember Milkman, And these were people who came to your door at the early hours of the morning and dropped a pint of milk on your doorstep. But when you actually look at what the Milkman was, it was probably one of the greatest business ideas in the world. And if you can imagine a world where it didn't exist ever in the past, and somebody actually came up with the idea today of a milkman, it actually could be $1 billion idea, especially when you look at some of the crazy valuations companies get nowadays, because it could actually be considered as a data-driven subscription service that supplies one of the world's most purchased drinks in recyclable packaging whilst being delivered direct to your door in an electric vehicle. And there's other companies out there where you can consider them and look at them in a totally different way. So here's two examples. Starbucks, we know it as a multinational chain of coffee houses. Or is it a data and technology company that's actually using reinforcement learning technology in its app to actually understand what it is that customers want, to personalize that experience? Or look at Tesla. Is Tesla a manufacturer of cars and solar panels, or is it actually a technology and data company that's at the forefront of battery and computer chip technology that's actually powering them cars and solar products? And that's kind of how we've been looking at NGN and how we've been looking at data over the last few years. What is it we actually are, and how can that drive the way we work? So as we've been on this journey over the past few years, digitalization is kind of front and center of what we're trying to achieve in the Data and Information Center of Excellence. We want to use digital technologies to change how our business operates, how we can bring more benefits to colleagues and customers, to stakeholders, and to the wider economy and the wider community as well. So we set ourselves a bit of a question, really, and it was a simple question but a hard one to answer. How do we support them, consumers, stakeholders, colleagues, and the economy through digitalization and putting data front and center? And each one of these light bulbs here in white is probably a terrible idea I had. And eventually you land on something that you think, you know what, that might work. And that's where DICE came from, the Data and Information Center of Excellence. And we said, we're going to build something that's going to help deliver the digitalization strategy within NGN as part of our GD2 business plan. So the Data and Information Center of Excellence has really two fundamental parts. It's a place where colleagues with specific skill sets can come and work, but it's also a place where colleagues and stakeholders can come to if they need them specific skill sets. And it's really allowed us to, I guess, mature NGN around data management. And it's built into three different parts. So first of all, it's what maybe the most boring bit, but to me the most important bit. It's them core data management practices. We developed a data management strategy. We built a data governance program and framework within the business, and we started to upskill people within our team in activities such as metadata management, data design and modeling, which was something we'd never really done correctly in the past, and most importantly, the data quality management. Because of that, we then could start getting and looking at the exciting bits around data science, around data engineering, the automation of processes within the business, and utilizing programming languages and the people who could write code to help them business processes. But then we did realize a gap. We are an asset-based business. We have operatives out in the field day and night doing, whether it be emergency repair activities or our replacement and connections programs, to improve the quality of data and actually to make sure that the flow of data into NGN is coming in a timely fashion. We needed to move away from paper-based data collection. So we actually developed an apps team within NGN, which looked at performance data around assets, around going to jobs. We then looked at asset data being collected within apps. And obviously we've got our geospatial desktop and mobile applications as well. So all in all, the Data and Information Center of Excellence kind of encompasses all of the key areas we believe are important to help develop this digitalization strategy. And we have some key strategic objectives. I'm not going to go through each one of these because I'm going to try and give some examples of how these have kind of shaped how we work. But we do believe that this digitalization work, maximizing the value of data, making data visible, and working with partners has to be underpinned by robust data management best practice within the business. So we put together a 3-year plan, and this did coincide with our implementation of SAP S/4HANA. And that was kind of the question. We invested heavily in a new system. How do we ensure that we're getting as much value out of it as possible? And we've got the controls in place to make sure we don't end up with poor quality data in a beautiful system. So we spent a lot of time looking at data management practices around the world. What is best practice? How can we bring that into our business? And then we came up with this idea of the Data and Information Centre of Excellence. And we put this plan together, and then it changed instantly, like any good, well thought out plan does. What we were trying to achieve here was everything. And we learned, as I'll show you in a minute, it was trying, like eating an elephant. You couldn't do it. It was too big. It'd have been perfect if the business didn't exist and we were waiting for it to go live, but the business was happening around us, and obviously we had to deal with that. So we actually took a different approach. But ultimately, the first thing we did do was assess the maturity of data management practice within NGN. This here is actually the data management assessment we did. Each of the blue columns is a team within our business. And we can see it on an average, we come out around 2 out of 5 when it comes to data management. And we looked at the questions, we looked at the answers, we looked at the skill set of the people in these teams. And we decided, as a business, we're going to propose we get our data management maturity to a level 3 across all areas. But for the critical areas, the most important data in our business, we'll get that to a level 4. And we believe that is the right thing to do. And that is kind of how we built this data governance program. And to do that, we kind of adopted the principles out of the Dharma DMBOK 2 book. I actually find it a really fascinating read when we read it from front to back to front, and we pulled out the parts that we believe are relevant to NGN and our culture, and we started to adopt that now within our business. So we are putting this data governance program and framework on front and center of everything we do. So what I thought I'd talk you through is how we did that, because as I mentioned before, it actually didn't go not to plan, but we wanted to do everything, and we realized very quickly we couldn't do that. So we built it out into 4 different areas. We wanted to understand business drivers. We wanted to define the organization structure that would support this data governance program. We wanted to give direction and application on data governance. It can't just be a policy sat on the shelf. It needs to mean something and to be real. And we wanted to make sure we had ongoing monitoring to ensure it's effective. And it all sounded great until you get to the point, like everything, where you just think, how do we do this? So we developed this framework. Very lucky, as part of Dharma, you get to speak to so many different people across the UK who have got different ideas and who you can bounce ideas off. And we put together this framework, which allowed us to break up our work into discrete areas, as I say. But then it gets to the actual delivery, and it's a bit like, how do we do this? How do we break up this business and deliver this framework across the business? Because we can't do it all. And we began by trying to do it all. And we learned very early that actually it's too much. We probably just need to pick certain data items. And that's kind of what we did. And we learned 6 key lessons. And if anybody's about to kickstart a data governance program, and I'm not happy to talk about it offline, but these are 6 key things I think it's really important to take into account. You've got to begin small and do something. We wrote a strategy, we had a framework, and we tried to apply it to the full business. It was too much, so we actually had to say, let's begin small, let's find something and let's do it. And let's do what we say we're going to do. We were a relatively new team. We had a remit that didn't exist before. So we had to prove to people there was a lot of value in what we were doing, and we had to stop starting and start finishing work, because we were trying to do too much. We never actually finished anything. We just kick-started a lot of different things, and you've got to demonstrate the value straight away. And we did that through defining what the roles and responsibilities and the authority were, and we promoted the use of automation to ensure sustainability. We wanted to go into a business area, increase the maturity, and give them the tool sets that allow them to look after themselves, and we'll have like an overarching control. So we decided the best thing to do with that was to actually do something. So we identified the most important piece of data within NGN, and that is the MPRN. The MPRN is a meter point reference number. If you've got a gas supply at home, you will have an MPRN. It's a unique identifier unique identifier for your gas meter point. Through the course, obviously over the past few decades, different utilities have been taken over, they've done system integration, data's moved from one system to another, there's been no real data quality work done, it's just been lifted and shifted. And we found in our business that our MPRNs probably was not a true reflection of actually what the real world was. MPRNs are actually owned by a company called Exaserve, and Exaserve hold the master, and there was no direct relationship between Exaserve systems and NGN systems. So we decided, let's apply this framework to the MPRNs. And that's what we did. So we have this data science process flow here, if you like, and we asked a question. How do we create a one-on-one relationship between our systems in NGN for the premises and Exaserve systems for the MPRNs? Well, we're also creating a relationship between the distribution mains and the service pipe, the actual assets. And we went through a process of understanding kind of the data and the business processes behind it. We looked at the transactions, we spoke to every subject matter expert we could find, we reviewed processes, and we identified the actual pain points, not just in how it's ended up how it is now, but if we did fix it, what would be the pain points which would need to fix to ensure it didn't end up where it is now. And we then started looking at sourcing that data, we extracted it, we profiled it, we enriched it where we could, and we did them data quality checks around completeness and accuracy, etc. And then we visualized that. We had millions of lines of data. We had to visualize that in a way where the subject matter experts could make something of it to help inform, are we on the right track? And then as we got there, then we started to prepare and cleanse the data. We understood the modeling techniques, and where we landed up with is a matching algorithm. We looked at all the data in Exaserve systems, we looked at all the data we had, and we started to say, okay, then what are the relationships? Because believe it or not, we had a unique identifier called an MPRN, but it actually turned out not to be that unique within our business. So we had to bring in other pieces of data to get that uniqueness. So where we ended up before we did this work, we had 8 million premises within our SAP system, which is obviously wrong considering we only have around 2.6 million endpoints in our network. So there's a big duplication effort there. And we also had 3.9 million live service pipes, which we believe which is correct. So we had to then match 8 million to the 2.6 million in Exaserve systems, while also maintaining the relational integrity of the service pipes. And that became a real challenge. So what we decided is actually we can't link 8 million premises to 2.6 million. So what we should do is bring in the 2.6 million from Exaserve, create that as a master record, and actually then spending the time on the most important bit, linking the 3.9 million service pipes into the 2.6 million premises within our system. And that's near enough what we exactly did. When we went live, we were able to match 2.6 million service pipes to premises from Exaserve, and phase 2 has already kicked off to match the remaining 1.2 million unmatched service pipes. And up until, last week, we matched another 700,000. So we've got about another half a million to go. And then obviously we're going to look at how we can do that, because as we get down to the bottom, the matching exercise becomes a lot more difficult because of the quality of data. So the question, I guess, is, so what? What did that actually do? Well, it's kind of put us in a different place now with how we actually run our business by sorting out this data problem. We now have a direct link between Exaserve and NGN's S4 system for the MPRN data. Not only does that give us address data, but it allows us to access customer data around customers who may need support in certain situations, who have certain vulnerabilities where we need to be aware of that. It then allows us to push it through to some of the apps we've built. We've built a work order execution app. We've built a dispatch app that allows our emergency team in the north to dispatch work. And it allows us to use that data in project systems, which is the part of S4 we use to plan our repex and connections workload. And that has really helped build efficiencies. We don't have as many data quality errors now when it comes to invoicing for suppliers and shippers. And it's really allowed us to support customers in a better way by getting data to the field a lot quicker than we could do before. But like everything I've kind of explained, we have a good idea, then we realize we missed something and we got something wrong. And that actually came in the error log. So every night Exasurf send data to NGN, and it's using the NPRN now as a unique identifier to update the data. But if it can't find an NPRN, it obviously errors. It's got nowhere to put the data, and that spits out an error log. So when we went live with this, literally on day number one of the most, I guess, skillful people within our team actually spent the first day, all day, fixing these errors. And then over time, we realized they were spending around an average of 4 or 5 hours a day looking at the error, seeing if it were a genuine error. Do I need to create the NPRN into SAP so Exasurf can find it? Or is it a data quality issue on Exasurf side? And we thought, this is no good. This person should be doing something else. So we needed to automate this. But we found it really difficult because it was a different error all the time. How can you automate something when you're not knowing what to expect? So what we actually did is we spent 6 months recording every error we got and recording what decision we actually made. And then over time, we built some code using ABAP coding to kind of build some AI and robotics that actually could take the error, look at the error, and think, what has a person previously done with this error? And that's exactly what we've done. So now the person is taken out of the equation. The Exasurf interface will run. SAP will say this is an error. The AI will look at that and say, what would the person have done with this previously? And if he's seen that error before, he'll make the same decision. Obviously, where we want to get to going forward is kind of then progressing that to say, this is an error I haven't seen before, but what would I do to fix it? But obviously, that will obviously take time. So that's really allowed us to disrupt that full end-to-end process. And again, I go back to the framework around the consistency. We applied this framework to the NPRNs. We were able to tick all them boxes. We put data owners in place, we put data stewards in place, we put data quality checks in using SAP Information Steward, and we put the policies and procedures in place. And we actually began off with a data quality score of 1 when we did our assessment. When by the time we'd finished, we actually got it up to 4, and that's where we currently are. We obviously got a decision now, do we invest the time to get to a 5, or is it better off to move on to the next kind of data object? And we've actually chose to move on to the next data object. We feel like a level 4 is sufficient for this data item. But it actually allows us to go one further than that. Around this kind of think digital, how can we use digital technologies to enable improvements for our colleagues and customers? We also developed an app that we were able to use if we have a major loss of supply on our network. So like any utility, a major loss of supply is something that you don't want to happen. And this would be where we would lose, by definition, over 250 properties in a single area. Operationally, like most networks, we are absolutely superb. You know, the guys and girls are on site, they're making it safe, they're getting customers what they need, and they're getting them back on gas as soon as practically possible. But from a support element, it was all done on paper. The GSOS payments were all kind of all collected on paper. Who was on gas, who was off gas were done on paper. And it actually probably impeded the operational guys from an efficiency point of view. And also from a GDPR perspective, you don't want pieces of paper flying around all over the place during a loss of supply. So we thought, because we got this rich NPRN data, we could push this through to some kind of app. So we developed this loss of supply app, which is using the live NPRN data to support a loss of supply. And this here is a screenshot as an example. This is an area that had a loss of supply as part of testing. And you can see here, all these properties are now without gas. Where you see number 2s, their properties we've been to twice. So we actually record how many times we've visited each of these properties. But it allows us to identify vulnerable customers as well, which customers may want heating facilities, may need vouchers for food. It allows us to target them really, really quickly to get them what they need. And as we go through the process of reintroducing gas to the network, we can actually then start recording, is everybody off gas before we turn it back on? Where have we been to do the purge and relight to get the customer back on gas? Make sure we prioritize, the customers who need to be on first. And it allows us to do it in a digital way, which then allows the data from the field to flow back through to the incident room, so the person controlling the loss of supply can make more strategic decisions based on that. And that's kind of an end-to-end of how we took data management, data governance, data quality as kind of the core activities, put them front and center, and then pushed it through to both disrupt and then think digital around what we can do. So what next? Well, we've kind of done the work we were doing on S4, and I'd say we went live with that last year. So our next part of call is to update our GIS systems, which we're doing, hopefully going to begin doing later this year. So as part of that upgrade, we will be moving to a utility network data model. Again, something we've never done as a business before, but something we're really, really excited to begin. I'm sure, like everything, we'll make our own decisions, we'll learn from them, and we'll hopefully implement it in the quickest possible time we can. As part of that work, we're also going to enable the SAP Geo enablement framework, which then allows us to look at both our asset data and workload data, not just in a SAP system, but within a geographical system with this GIS upgrade. And it just brings, I guess, a better way of working and a more digital way of working to our colleagues and stakeholders. And with that, and we've already started doing this, we're developing this NGN geospatial ecosystem where we've developed stuff like the loss of supply app, the work order execution app, where we can bring in GIS data. And it allows us then for our end users and our colleagues in the field to access this data in such a better way. And also back in the office, we can use the Explorer and Editor tools to allow our colleagues in the back office to actually work with the data better and analyze the data better and edit the data in a lot better way. And rather than having two separate systems, it becomes one. And the really exciting part is, as we move into GD2, we believe that open data is the way forward. We want to make our data available to other organizations, but we also want to bring in data from organizations, whether that be weather data, traffic data, workload data, and actually bring it into our geospatial ecosystem to allow us to make better decisions. So going back to the first slide, so who are NGN? We are a gas company and we are an asset-based business, but we've tried looking at this a little bit differently within our team. Is NGN a data and technology company that delivers a world-class gas distribution service? We deliver gas to 6.7 million individuals through a network of assets using the latest technology in IoT, robotics, and AI. Our workforce are now utilizing the latest hardware and software to collect and consume data to help improve both theirs and the customer's experience. And we make data-driven decisions through decision support tools to help drive the investments we make to make sure we're getting the best possible outcome for our customers and stakeholders and the environment. And we truly believe in the power of data. And as such, we are going to make as much data available to our stakeholders, improve coordination efforts to help meet the climate change challenge. I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you for this opportunity to share this story. And if there's any questions anybody's got, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Liam?
I can.
Amazing.
For somebody who works in technology, I've had a disaster.
We'll let you off. Okay, so let's go. Okay, question one. So from what you said, so does this mean NGN have a single source for all your GIS information and that the systems just consume information from this? And how do you control its accuracy with so many systems pulling onto it?
Yeah, great question. So I'll approach it in two different ways, if that's okay. So in terms of, I guess, the single source, so our asset data is actually sourced within our S4 system, and we have an interface between S4 and GIS. So we master it in S4, and obviously then it pulls it through to GIS. So S4 becomes the source of that data, and we consume it then from GIS, whether it be through the ArcGIS Online or through our geographical ecosystem that we've been building over the past few years. In terms of its accuracy, we implemented a tool called SAP Information Steward last year, which allows us to do data quality checks automated. So we run checks, whether daily, weekly, monthly, depending on the asset type, to allow us to make sure around the accuracy of that. I think, like most people appreciate, utilities obviously have, I guess, because of the sales and the integrations and the migration to new systems, the data quality has obviously got worse over time. So we all deal with different data quality issues individually. So we're just trying to work our way through them. And the S4 implementation were a great opportunity for us to kind of begin again and say, let's look at the data in the current source systems and what do we want to actually migrate into S4 So we didn't actually lift and shift. We spent about 2 or 3 years profiling, cleansing, enriching data before we put it into S4.
Okay, brilliant. So that actually led on very well to another question we had, which was all your analytics, cleansing and matching work done inside S4HANA, or did you require additional capacity to do this work?
Both. So obviously in the early days, we didn't have S4HANA and the capability that brings, because obviously we're implementing it. So we use a lot of different systems, and whether we had, we've got people within our team who can do Python, write R scripts. So we kind of did it in that way, because we didn't have the capability in the first instance. But then as we started to stand up the S4 systems with the development system, the QA system, and then obviously the production system, it allowed us to do different type of analysis in there. And we're really seeing the power that you can get out of HANA. To be honest with you, it's been really good for us. But in the early days, we had to, I guess, beg, borrow and steal as much capability from all over the place.
Yeah, brilliant. Another question. So pretty amazed by the DICE team. It sounds amazing, what work you've got going on. But do you have a dedicated GIS team who act as data owners, or does all of that fall under DICE?
So the journey of DICE and the 100 incorrect ideas we had, one of the first one was, what is DICE and does it become the data owner for all data in NGN? But as we did that kind of business case and the analysis, we realised we'd probably need around 200 people within our team. And for to do it correctly, to do it right, and for a business our size, that wasn't the right answer. And ultimately, we wanted the ownership to be with the subject matter experts who understood the data. So the only data we own is I'm technically the data owner for the NPRN data, just because of the significance it plays now within NGN, to make sure we can keep that under control. But every other data set is owned by the kind of business area. So for the asset data and the GIS data, that's owned by our asset information team. Our job is to make sure the correct controls, policies and procedures and standards are in place, and it's consistent with what we're trying to do within NGN. Where we do want to go, though, around this GIS team, we obviously have a team who update the data within GIS. I think there's an opportunity around location data management within the Data and Information Centre of Excellence, which kind of then utilises the technology that's coming down the road to allow us then to give it to our GIS teams and ultimately all our teams in NGN and say this is where we think the direction of travel is with geospatial technology, because it isn't what it is today. And that's for sure. So I think our role there will be to embed new technology within our business, if that answers that question.
Yeah.
I have an habit of going off on a
no, it's brilliant. Okay, another question. How did you convince your business that going first with utility network wasn't a risk?
It's not. No, to be fair, what a great question. And it is. Let's be honest, it is, and even from a data migration point of view, it does concern me. I'm probably more concerned about this migration than I was about the S4 migration, and that took 2 or 3 years of hard work. NGN's got a habit though of going first. If we think it's right, we'll do it, and we're totally comfortable and getting more comfortable with being wrong and understanding. And what the S4 migration did, it gave us 2 or 3 years to work out what a good data migration strategy is. And we're going to be using that for the GIS upgrade and the kind of the migration to the utility model. And we feel like that's sufficient, but it doesn't come without risk. So we'll make sure we do it in a controlled way. It is risky, without a shadow of a doubt, but the benefits outweigh it.
Yeah.
We truly believe the benefits outweigh it, and someone's got to go first, ultimately.
Absolutely. Right, we've still got more questions. How do you see third-party data playing a bigger role in NGN's data roadmap for GD2?
Oh, it's going to be absolutely, it's going to be huge. And that's where I think the upgrading of the GIS landscape and creating this ecosystem becomes really powerful, because when you're consuming all this third-party data, it'd be great to consume it in that kind of geographical format, because that's where the power comes to the end users. People become used to looking on Google Maps or look at, they go on apps that I don't even understand. As I'm getting older, I realise I'm not in with a crowd no more. And I think how people consume it will be in a geographical way. So if we can bring in third-party data sets and create a layer within our mapping system to consume it with our own data as well, and then do the analytics, whether it be weather data, traffic data, it's going to be really, really powerful. And I think, to be fair, it's probably the greatest opportunity this country's got in the next 5 to 10 years. around this kind of data sharing, open data world.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. Great presentation. Struck by some of the similarities between how you are seeing the value of your data and Journey Highways England shared yesterday. Do the top execs at NGN also get this?
So I'll answer that in two parts. First of all, so I think the presentation yesterday from Highways England were absolutely fantastic, to be honest with you. I think they're probably further ahead of where we are in terms of maturity, especially around the valuation of data. The monetization of data is something we've looked at lightly, but I think we've got a lot of work to do before we even begin that piece of work. So that we're really interesting to know where they are and the journey they've been on. And the second part is, yes, I guess the kind of success of DICE is because it's got that support from senior managers. Our CEO is one of the kind of most forward-looking CEOs I've ever worked with. He's really thinking that 5-10 years in the future, and he totally understands the direction of travel when it comes to data. So that makes, and he understands it as well. And the senior management team ask some really good questions, which show you they understand it. So it's easier to say, this is what I think we could do. And they obviously then can feed that into the business strategy. So we are fortunate in that respect.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Liam. We got there in the end.
Yeah, apologies for that.
So many questions. You said, if I've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. We had quite a few. Thank you so much again.